The Miami Hurricanes are not having the season they imagined. Cristobal was a splash hire who brought in what was thought to be some of the best coordinators in college football. Combine that with a lot of returning talent, including Heisman hopeful quarterback Tyler Van Dyke, and some early season hype felt pretty justified for the Canes. However, they've fallen short of those expectations. While their record sits at 4-4, they've played a friendly schedule to date, with their only marquee matchup in Texas A&M struggling as well. But that doesn't mean this team isn't dangerous. There's still a lot of talent on this roster. Let's start by looking at their offense, which is an interesting matchup since it's basically a mirror image of FSU's defense. Miami is one of the best teams in the country in success rate, which is a measure of how consistently you can move the football to get into good down and distances, whereas FSU struggles in success rate on defense. However, Miami isn't a good offense in terms of overall yards per play, which doesn't bode well against FSU's defense, which is one of the best in yards per play in the country. All of this is to say that Miami is a plodding yet efficient offense that'll be matched up against FSU's bend but don't break style of defense. A lot of the reason why Miami's offense seems to specialize in success rate and doesn't generate a lot of big plays comes down to how they design their run game. Their base run play, which they share with Michigan, is rare enough that it's a pretty good indicator that offensive coordinator Josh Gattis comes fresh off the Harbaugh tree. This play is called Duo. Duo looks and acts just like Inside Zone, but it's based on entirely different principles. Duo is named that because it prioritizes double teams across the line of scrimmage over all else. Since this is a gap play, the goal of these double teams isn't to move the defender horizontally like they would in Inside Zone, but it's to get a vertical push up the field. The offense then leaves one inside backer unblocked, who's the primary read for the running back. If he flows outside, then the running back hits the hole hard inside. But if he stays inside, as he does here, then the back bounces the ball to the vacated perimeter. Since Duo emphasizes these double teams and vertical push, it can be a really efficient way to move the ball. But the Hurricanes haven't been able to turn these runs into any chunk plays. So far, the longest run of their season has been for 26 yards. This struggling running game has put extra pressure on the passing game. Tyler Van Dyke hasn't lived up to preseason Heisman hype, and he's been more inconsistent than he was last season, but I really don't feel like he's been the issue. Firstly, he's been asked to make much harder throws this season. Miami is towards the top in the country in comeback routes. They really like to isolate receivers in trip sets, release them vertically to make the corners bail, then have them come back for a nice timing route. When run well, it's super difficult to cover, but it's also one of the harder throws in the game. But even then, both him and backup Jake Garcia have looked pretty good throwing the ball. They've just received little help. Miami is 100th in drop ball rate, and when they do catch the ball, they haven't been able to get many yards after the catch, where they rank 80th. The lone bright spot here has been tight end Will Mallory. They particularly like to clear out the defenders on one side of the ball and run him on these little shallow routes to get easy completions for the quarterbacks. This is something to watch for, as FSU had a broken coverage or two on very similar concepts against Georgia Tech. What makes this receiving issue particularly interesting is that it's the exact same issue that Miami has on the other side of the ball. There's really no way around this. The Hurricanes secondary has been one of the worst in the country. They rank 120th in yards per attempt, 130th in yards per completion, and 131st in yards after catch. When you give up multiple plays like this to Middle Tennessee State, you know that there's an issue. The problem mostly comes in tackling. FSU would be wise to hit the screen game and a short to intermediate passing game early and often to challenge this secondary to tackle in space. This is all particularly baffling because Miami is giving them plenty of help on the front end. In fact, I would say their defensive line has been borderline elite this season. They're currently second in sack rate and fourth in pressure rate, and they haven't had to blitz much to rack up these stats, sitting at 112th in blitz rate. So they've been able to keep extra men in coverage, have gotten great pass rushes, and they are still one of the worst secondaries statistically in the country. With this in mind, I actually think their defense is better than their final scores indicate. While their secondary is a major problem, their offensive turnovers have been an even bigger issue. They currently sit at the 110th most turnover-prone team in the country, with 16 turnovers through 8 games. While a good portion of those came in one game against Duke, it's still something that has made the defense's life a lot harder. There are very few metrics that would take Miami over FSU in this matchup, but metrics don't see the full picture. Miami has a lot of talent on this roster, including a quarterback who I believe still has a bright future in Tyler Van Dyke. Plus, this is a rivalry game. The Hurricanes can still win this one, but I think it would take a cleaner game than they've been able to play all season.
Thanks for watching. Miami fans, let me know how I did in the comments below. If you're a Florida State fan, make sure to like and subscribe and check out more great FSU stuff over at Knowles247. Thanks.